and Carlos. First time on my channel. Welcome, Carlos. And of course, Matt, you're always welcome on my channel. Thank you so
Thank you.
much for joining me.
Thanks for
Pleasure.
having us.
Hello to everyone in the chat. I can't see any chat yet, but hopefully there's somebody watching. Now, I know that Katie should be coming along. I haven't seen her join us yet, but hopefully she should be here a bit
Nuclear
later.
Katie.
Yes, Nuclear Katie. And Alan, unfortunately, may not be able to make it because his little boy isn't well. So we will see.
But don't worry too much. Atticus is a bit sick, but it's nothing super serious.
Yes. Hello to Rogue.
Get on, Atticus.
Hey, right.
Yes, get well soon. Yeah. Anyway, I thought to begin with, why don't you introduce yourselves to the people in the chat who may not know you? And Carlos, I haven't done that yet, but after the live, I will link your channel for people as well.
Very kind of you. Oh, I guess I'll go first. Oh, there's Rogue. What's the crack, Rogue? What's the crack? Common phrase for us here in Ireland means what's the story? How's it going? How's things? I am Carlos. I am one half of StoryTube, the lesser half to some. We have a book channel where we talk about books in all their forms.
I wouldn't say lesser, but I would say uglier.
Uglier half, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's mean.
No, it's a compliment to Yellow. Yellow is lovely.
True.
Yeah.
And hello to everyone in the chat. Hello, Rogue and Jenna Rose and Christian. I hope that you guys enjoyed this discussion. I've been really looking forward to it. I'm sure people are wondering why I've gone backwards, because we did Deadhouse Gates first. And it's because I wasn't sure if I was going to do all the books, but after doing Deadhouse, I loved it so much and I decided, no, I want to do all of them. I want to talk about all of them. So that's why we've come back to do Gardens of the Moon, and after this one, it'll be back in order of the books. But anyway, I thought to start off, and we were talking about this just before we went live, is addressing this, I guess, concern that a lot of people have online. I've seen it in videos, I've seen it in comments, that people are very intimidated to start Malazan, particularly Gardens of the Moon, that they are worried it'll be too complex for them. So I thought, let's talk about that. Is it too hard for people to read? Or maybe not too hard, but is that a legitimate concern? Is it really as difficult as everyone claims? So we can start any which way. Carlos, you can start first, or Matt, and then I'll add my 2 cents worth.
Well, I can only speak as someone who is halfway through the Books of the Fallen, but for me, from my experience, it's all about context and sort of going with the flow, with the context that you have. And for me, Erikson gives you just enough of the how to know, like, the what is going on, but not necessarily give you enough, or not enough, but not necessarily give you loads of why at the beginning. He lets the why sort of unfold as you go, or the kind of more complex context unfolds as you go through the books. So like me being only halfway through the series, I suspect I have about 30% context so far, but you feel that progression as you go.
Yeah.
You feel more comfortable in the world as you go. And revelation here for you guys, I have started Bone Hunters, and even just from having read 5 of them, the beginning of Bone Hunters, you immediately settle into a rhythm with it. I find that once you have that rhythm with his writing, it is instantly immersive, and you can just sink into it. I think the thing that people find intimidating about Gardens of the Moon is that chaos is kind of front and center. of gardens, and it is more stoppy, starty, jumpy, hoppy, whatever you want to call it. The pace is a lot faster, a lot. What is the term? He drops you in media res.
Media res, yeah.
So right into the action, right into the thick of things. People are doing stuff, and you don't know why they're doing it. But I think he gives you enough scene setting and character that you know what they're doing. I think people just struggle with the why. So that's my rambly answer.
Yeah, I would agree. I didn't introduce myself in case anyone doesn't know me.
I forget to let you do that.
No, it's all right. It's fine. I've got a channel called Malazan The Books. If you don't know me, I don't really do anything there anymore except a live stream every Sunday called the Sunday Pub. And many people in the chat are Sunday Pub regulars. I'm wearing my Bridge Burners t-shirt. I'm drinking out of my Bridge Burners mug. So I am the, I guess, the Malazan veteran on the screen. I've read the entire Book of the Fallen, and I'm rereading it with Ian Esselmont's books. If you don't know, like the complete Malazan everything by both authors is 26 or 27 books now. But the main series, Malazan Book of the Fallen, is only 10. I'm about halfway through, or a bit past halfway through, rereading the 10. I think, on the one hand, I think the difficulty is built up by gatekeepy attitudes. People who want to feel superior because they've read a complex fantasy series and completed it, and you haven't, will tell you that it's maybe too complex for you because you're not as smart as me. And that's, of course, stupid and should be avoided. And people that say things like that for those reasons should be ignored because they're idiots. The other thing, though, is I think your experience with it will have a lot to do with your expectations. And maybe what you're used to as well. Like if you put up, Kathy, put up Rogue's comment again. He said he'd only read a handful of series when he started. And the idea that you have to be well-read in fantasy is a load of rubbish. I would totally agree. In fact, I would say that being well-read in fantasy can fight against you when you're reading Malazan. Because what you may be used to, especially, for example, if you're a big Sando fan, is you may be used to a new concept being dropped on you, and then you get like 20 pages explaining it in detail. You know, and you've got clear rules, and you know, you've got a magic system that sounds like science, and you've got the older, well-experienced, wise person explaining to the young, stupid person how everything works and who's related to who and how the politics is, and you know, all of that. Erikson doesn't do any of that. Like, extremely rarely will he drop an expo dump on you like that. You need to actually use your brain, and that may be the thing that feels a bit more difficult because it's not. I mean, I wouldn't say it's difficult, but I would say it's not a beach read. You know,
I also think that he does
not a beach read.
He does do some exposition, but he does it in a way. He does a lot of exposition actually, but he does it in a way that makes it feel like he's hiding it in plain sight. Because
you have to do exposition, especially in something in a secondary world. You have to do some sort of exposition, but he does it in bits and pieces where you have to put together the complete explanation yourself. You have to pay attention, you know, and if you don't mind paying attention and using your brain, I don't think Malazan is difficult. The other thing, we were talking about this just before we came on. I have at some point I realized that if you approach Malazan the way you would approach a mystery novel, like a murder mystery, you'll probably roll with it a lot easier because you go into a murder mystery knowing that there are going to be mysterious things and you're not going to have everything explained to you in the first 50 pages. and you're not going to know the full truth until probably the end, and so on and so forth. If you approach Malazan that way, yeah, exactly. You have breadcrumbs and clues, and you can form your own theories, but you won't know for sure until the end. And if you approach Malazan the same way and just relax about the things that you don't know and trust that you will have those things explained to you at some point and you will understand them, you'll probably enjoy it a lot more and not find it difficult feeling.
He doesn't lay down the parameters, the exact parameters immediately for you to like plant your flag in a way, because a lot of fantasy, I think, exists in a binary of I need to know what we're doing, why we're doing it, who we're doing it with, and who are we fighting. And I don't think Malazan necessarily does that right off the bat anyway. Again, I only say that 5 books in.
It certainly doesn't do it in Gardens. In Gardens, he's intentionally kind of confusing about who's fighting who and who's on whose side, and somebody's stabbing someone in the back, but I'm not sure who. And you know, a lot of that stuff is right there at the beginning and can be a little disorienting.
I like as well how you bring up the sort of similarity of approaching a mystery novel. For me, Gardens reads like a political thriller in the sense that the political thriller, a good one anyway, there's a lot of really bad ones, but a good one won't spell out all of the cultural context, political context, historical context. You need to live in the world to sort of decide where you stand almost. And I think Malazan operates like that, but just within fantasy. And to me, the Rhythm Gardens read like a political thriller where people are boots on the ground, doing a load of stuff in a war, and you're sort of just following them as individuals, taking orders, making decisions based on the information that they have. So you're just, you know, I guess, getting snippets of information from them. And
Rogue's last comment is very on point. You generally have a feeling of knowing what the characters that you're involved with know. And of course, they don't know everything because nobody knows everything about everything in their world. Even we in our world don't know everything. You know, and they have opinions and they have ideas that are wrong and, you know, all of that. So I love that myself. I love like getting into a character and getting their view of the world and then realizing it's wrong, you know, like they're actually human, you know, they're not absolutely correct and all knowing, you know.
Yeah.
Which he's not afraid to do as well.
Sorry, what was that, Carlos?
Erikson isn't afraid to give you characters that change their perspective as well, that realize that their entire belief system was wrong, which I like a lot.
But that's also real. That's what happens sometimes in real life as well.
It's called character growth.
Set in stone in our minds. It shouldn't be, actually. We should be open to new ideas or, you know, philosophies, etc. I also don't think this is a book that people would find too complicated, but I recognize that if you are used to having everything laid out for you, if you are used to having the world explained to you, then this book and series will not be for those kinds of readers. This is one where you're not spoon-fed, and that's my favorite thing about it, is that I'm just dropped into this world and I have to try to figure out what is going on. And I'm one of these people who loves puzzles, so I like trying to piece it together. But I also don't expect to have everything explained in a first book. I expect to come away with a lot of questions at the end, which I'm hoping the author will explain the further I get into a series. It's a 10-book series. It is not a standalone, so of course we should not have everything explained. And that is my favorite part of this entire series. And I've now read 8. So I have found that the writing you get used to with time. I am definitely reading them faster now than I was earlier because I'm more used to this world. I understand more about the world. There are still a lot of questions even after 8 books, but I have a much broader understanding of the world and of Erikson's style of writing. So I think you just need to trust the author, and he's an author who will repay that tenfold in revelations, which sometimes you don't pick up immediately, but with time you think, oh, I know where this piece kind of fits. So it is not too difficult, but it is not a series for every reader. I think that
and I've read all 10, and I'm sad to inform you, you will not have all of your questions answered, even by the end of the series.
Know everything.
I mean, I haven't read all of Esselman's books yet, and they fill in a lot of gaps. I've read 2 of them, and there were things in those 2 where I was like, oh, okay, that fits in there, and that explains that character, which I didn't know anything about, and so on. But there are still going to be mysteries when you're finished.
I also think it's an important distinction to make as well of appreciation, like, versus taste. Like, if this style just isn't to your taste as well, it's absolutely fine. Because I think some people maybe feel a little alienated, and they're like, oh, well, if you don't get it, or if you are not willing to read this style, then there's something wrong with you. Like, just to clarify as well that, you know, it not being to your taste is totally fine as well. But I think if you're capable of reading all the books that you read, you're a reader, there's no reason why you can't read Gardens of the Moon or Malazan in general.
Yeah.
Although I will say that Malazan lovers are, of course, the better readers.
Higher level intellect, yes.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, no, let's not be snooty about that.
Can you? No, I'm joking, of course, for anyone that doesn't get my sarcasm. Can you kick Crocus Younghand? Because Crocus is like the biggest waste of pages in the entire series. Just kick Crocus right out. I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm sure it's one of our friends who specifically changed their name to come and troll me and you, Kath, because we are known Crocus haters.
Well, I just finished Toll the Hounds, and I'm not going to say anything else because that's something I wanted to mention is, please, everyone in the chat as well as us, we're not going to go beyond spoilers for Gardens of the Moon.
But we are full spoilers for Gardens of the Moon itself.
Yes, we are going to start with full spoilers, and I'll actually put a timestamp in the description after the video so that anyone who wants to avoid hearing spoilers because they haven't read Gardens can skip that part. I forgot to do it with the previous video. So please, no spoilers beyond this one. And yes, I can't say anything else about Crocus right now, but we will get to him in a minute because he's obviously a character in Gardens of the Moon. But yeah, so all right, I think we're all in agreement, and we've all read it, obviously, but I just don't like people thinking this is so hard, because it isn't.
No.
It's different. It may not appeal to you for many reasons, but it's not because it's too complicated. It's just one that I think is a series will benefit you to take it slowly, not to read it, expect to rush through it, because you will miss a lot of things that are important. It's also denser writing than other fantasy. And for that reason, it's just not a series to binge, I think, quickly. I mean, there's nothing wrong with binging the entire series, but I think you need to take your time with each book. That's what works for me. Anyway.
What I would also say to that is, yes, definitely it's worth reading it a bit slower than you might read a beach read. And there is also a lot of supplemental material. if you really want to try and keep track of things and maybe understand things a little bit better, there are so many different things. There is the Tor reread of The Fallen, which is basically a guy who's read it multiple times rereading it, and someone who's reading it for the first time doing a blog. And they do, I think, one post per book within each book, I think.
Right.
And they've done the whole series. So it's this huge reference, which is a good summary, but also a good discussion of like themes and characters and stuff like that. And you can essentially follow it along as you're reading. There's also the 10 Very Big Books podcast, which is a guy who's read it once before and 3 of his friends who've never read it, reading it together and then discussing each book. And there's an episode for each book or half of each book. And at the end of each book, they do an interview with Erikson discussing that book, which is also awesome. So
there's also the DLC Book Club, I think it is, a channel on YouTube that does like chapters from each book. I actually haven't watched that until I finish the series. Then I'm going to watch a lot of, I think, Malazan content. But there are a lot of sources or resources for anyone who is struggling. And even I, after 8 books, find sometimes I have to look up a character because I can't remember who they are and what role they had previously, because, you know, these are not small books. Gardens of the Moon is the smallest of all of them. So it can be hard to keep track because there are so many characters. And that may be another thing that will put off some readers, is that it is a huge, huge cast of characters.
Yeah. Like, say goodbye to 650-page books after Gardens. This is as slim as it gets.
I just read a 1,300-page book. So there you go. Double that. Yeah. So, and I think the rest are just like that as well. All right. So do you think we should move on to spoilers or just talk generally first? Actually, no. We will stop and I think maybe talk about how we found Gardens of the Moon, our own experiences on it, and then we'll move on to spoilers and specific subjects, whether it is characters or plot lines or anything like that. Okay, so this time, Matt, you can start.
Okay. Anyone who knows me and has heard me talk about Malazan will probably be surprised. I mean, I'm drinking out of the custom-made Bridge Burners mug. I've got my Bridge Burners t-shirt on. I DNF'd Gardens of the Moon twice before the pandemic. I mean, over a 10-year period. I tried it at some point. Like, first of all, I'd like to say, garbage cover. Steve Stone is the artist. I think it's a nicely painted tower with a moon behind it, but there is no tower in the book that plays any significant role. This does not represent or even relate to anything in the book, except that there's a moon in the title and there's a moon on the cover. The cover, if you ask me, and I will yell at Tor until I die for this, the cover should be this. Mark Simonetti did the French covers, or the cover art for the French editions, and his things are just beautiful and they're super relevant, and they each of his covers for all of the French books takes a pivotal, dramatic, epic moment and represents it just in a stunning way. So those
are also the standard edition covers in Spain, and actually Gardens of the Moon cover in Spain is the one with Anomander Rake with the sword in his back in front.
Yeah. That's also the what is it? One of the Eastern Press or Subterranean Press.
I think it's a sub press
special edition has that cover.
Yeah,
that's epic. I mean, that's a gorgeous cover. This one, the first time I saw this, I thought it was a vampire novel.
Yeah, I can see that.
Just looking at the cover, just like the mood, the vibe of it, I thought it was a vampire story or something. I don't know. I bounced off it twice over a 10-year period. And then during the pandemic, my girlfriend disappeared. I lost my job all within like a 2-month period. And I couldn't go anywhere or go see my friends because lockdown. So I had a lot of time and I was just like, okay, damn it. This has been on my shelf forever. I keep hearing people talk about it. I'm going to sit down and read it. And I read the entire 10 books in 4 months, and which is too fast. I don't recommend that. I mean, do it if you want to, but it was a bit too much. Baruch does live in a tower, but he lives in a tower in a city, and this is a tower on some mountain up by itself. You know, it's like, this is not Darujistan. Anyway, I remember just being swept away by how epic everything was and how chaotic but exciting chaotic everything was in Gardens. I loved it, but I remember getting into later books, and like we said earlier, this is sort of a typical experience. I remember getting into Dead House Gates and going, oh, okay, so this is a bit more normal of a story and a bit less chaotic. You know, Gardens jumps around a lot, which can be kind of disorienting. At the time, because I was reading it really fast, I didn't know yet about all the supplemental material. I was just like, if I don't get it, I'm just going to keep rolling. You know, like something to come up, I'm like, I don't know what that is. That's okay. What happens next? You know, and I just kept going. And it all started to sink in and make more sense later. But I loved it. There are so many really epic, dramatic moments in this book. There is so much insane, over-the-top, bizarre world building. There's hundreds of thousands of years of history. All sorts of sentient races keep popping up. There's fucking undead crazy stuff going on. I mean, it's just like dragons. There's just like so much. As Iskar Jarak, anybody who's been on YouTube and is a Malazan fan for more than the last 3 years knows Iskar Jarak. He sort of stopped his channel a while ago, but Iskar, his videos are still there though. Like, I recommend anybody go back and watch them. Iskar used to always talk about lasers and fireballs, and that was his big thing. He was always like, I'm not an intellectual, I don't understand all the details, but oh my god, it's got lasers and fireballs like no other series. That's absolutely true. Like, some of the epic moments, demons popping up and dragons and just like shit exploding and whatever. It's really, really amazing. I loved it. Anyway, that was my sort of first experience with it.
I think I was sold on it potentially becoming one of my favorite things I've ever read when a maniacal talking puppet starts fireballing giant ravens. Really what did it for me at the beginning. I don't want to give any spoilers yet, but that whole chapter of the Siege of Pale was everything I was looking for in fantasy, because I often find that if I pick up a fantasy book, I really want it to get crazy. I want it to lean into the fantastical. I want it to be high fantasy. And Gardens of the Moon specifically really throws you in the deep end with high fantasy. Like, this is creative. This is imagination on crack.
Yeah.
It doesn't get higher than this high fantasy. Yeah,
it really doesn't. So I think it's the one that even 100 pages into the first book, I knew, okay, this is the series that goes balls to the wall. This is the series that will try everything, be creative, but also I find it extraordinarily well written. The writing itself is what got me here too, where it's not bog standard functional, which honestly I don't mind that if I'm in the mood for that. But I just find that with Gardens, it just had a little bit of everything. And also, I tend to read a lot outside of fantasy too. I read a lot of political thrillers, and it just sort of read like a really good political thriller, just set in a balls to the wall fantasy world with maniacal puppets, fireball, and giant fucking ravens.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's I have read quite a bit of fantasy over the years, and I remember seeing this Gardens of the Moon on the bookshelves, and I was like, at the bookstores, I mean, and I thought, oh, I don't think it's going to be for me. It looks very bleak, very dark. It may even have vampires because of the moon, etc. So I avoided it, and I thought, I like my epic fantasy, I like heroic fantasy, but with time, you can change as a reader. And when I came back to reading fantasy a few years ago, I thought I need to try this. And I was immediately blown away by the writing. I thought this is one of the best written fantasies I have read. And add to that a world like none other. Nothing else I've read like this. The imagination and how well structured the world is, how well thought out it is. It was clearly, I know Esselmont and Erikson actually had fleshed out this world during their dungeon. I've forgotten what it's called.
Dungeons and Dragons game.
Yes, Dungeons and Dragons. And you can see it in the book that this is a imagined, realized world that they have put a lot of thought into. And I think one of the things that really grabbed me was the actual history, how rich the history of this world was also. It wasn't just what was happening now, but also how much the past has influenced what is happening today. I just loved it. And I was so surprised at how much I enjoyed it, and how at the end of it, I thought, I think this could be one of the best series that I'm going to read. But of course, it was only the first book, and I always try to reserve judgment at the end of the first book. And most of you will in the chat probably know that, this one is, way up high in my fantasy series. But it's
I always say to myself, I'll disclaimer this before I say it. This is not gatekeepery thinking. This is my own personal experience with my reading. I think of Malazan as the first, one of the first fantasies I ever read that was clearly written for adults.
Yes.
Because I tried to read it when I was in my late 20s, and I just totally bounced off of it. It felt too obscure and unclear and whatever. And I tried to read it again in my 30s, same sort of experience. But as I got into my 40s, I was like, I've read a lot of fantasy by now, and a lot of it is very handholdy. It's very spoon feedy, and I got to the point where I was like, oh, okay, so now we're in that bit where we get just exposition for 20 pages. That's kind of boring, and also just always feels like the author is speaking to the reader, not the people in the world are speaking to each other. And then I started reading this, and I was like, oh, someone does it differently.
That describes my sentiment.
Everything to you
perfectly. Yeah, and my sentiment about traditional fantasy as well perfectly. Like, there's absolutely traditional fantasy that I love and adore and enjoy, but I just find more often than not, if I pick one up that is perhaps the standard story, the story might be fun, the book might be cool, and it might have some depth and nuance and theme and all that thing, but the delivery, I tend to find a little boring, and I kind of glaze over paragraphs. So yeah, the sort of the delivery of information to the reader is more you're on the journey with Erikson rather than he's telling it to you, if that makes sense in any way.
Like you're a bird's eye view, a bird's eye view rather than, yes.
This comment is the flip side of that.
Yes.
Because after reading Malazan, or since I read Malazan, I go back to some more straightforward, normal fantasy, whatever that is, sometimes, and I'm like, why are you explaining so much?
Yeah.
You've dropped me in a completely alien world. How can it be that I understand so much of what's going on after 200 pages? This feels wrong, you know, and like
you want to be confounded and confused instead.
Well, no, I mean the thing that I said it before, the thing that I really, really loved immediately with Erikson is you know what the character you're following knows. You know, there is nobody in the world who understands everything that's going on and explains it to you.
Yeah.
If you're with a grunt in the army, from his perspective, you also have almost no idea what's going on, but you know a lot about being a grunt in the army. And then if you're with the High Mage, the politics and the maneuverings of empire and all of that stuff starts coming in a bit more, and you understand some of that because you're with a guy who understands it, you know. But you so rarely get an ignorant kid who sits down with the wise wizard and has everything explained to him. You know, it just almost never happens in Malazan, which I think is perfect, you know, the way it should be.
He wants you to like live and breathe with the characters as they live and breathe in the world.
Yes, that's exactly how I felt. Like I am part of this cast and I'm walking along beside them, observing this world and trying to figure out, just like they are trying to figure out what is happening. And I also
want to say just really quickly, Rogue's, I think it's Rogue's not last comment, but the one before it. He says he was 23 when he started reading it.
Yes.
What I said about it being an adult book and me only getting it much later has to do with my immaturity. I'm not saying that anyone who is 15 or 20 or 30 can't get it, right? I mean, I think everybody should give it a go.
Yes.
But it just compared to other books, like the most stark contrast, popular fantasy contrast to me is Erikson and Brandon Sanderson. Like Sando explains everything and his writing is really obvious. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's really obvious. It's very straightforward. It's very descriptive. You do get a lot of expo dumps. You get magic that works like science and someone explains all of the rules to you in detail, you know, all that sort of stuff. And that to me feels like something I would have loved when I was 15, you know, but it's something that bores me at my age. And Erikson really engages me.
Like if the mood strikes, like for example, I really like Tad Williams, but I like Tad Williams specifically when I'm in the mood, like when it's Christmas time and I'm under a blanket and I want him to tell me of a little boy, a stupid little boy in a castle learning from the wizard, you know?
Yeah.
But if you're
there's
not in
there's a time and a place for certain books. And I'm sorry, I like some of my trashy books. I am sometimes not in the mood.
Don't apologize.
Something like Malazan, which takes a lot out of you. Certain books, I am wrung out at the end. I have felt hungover and needed like at least a few weeks before I was ready to tackle another one. Read another one, because I knew I was going to love it, but they are just, for me, such an emotional read. I really connect so heavily with the characters that when anything happens that I don't want to happen, I can get very upset and emotional about it. Yeah, I think that's something that isn't stressed enough, that this series, and Gardens of the Moon does it as well, can connect with you emotionally in a way you don't expect. You think that, well, I don't know so many of the characters, we haven't spent that much time with them, and yet you're still impacted by what is happening to them. And that I put down to the amazing writing of Erikson, that he can make me care about characters that are barely on the page.
Yeah, and you may not realize it's happening, but he's sort of, just because you're with them experiencing whatever they're experiencing with them vicariously, you do grow really attached, or at least I do personally anyway. And I think some criticism that I see of Gardens of the Moon online is the lack of character development. I really don't agree in the slightest. Yeah. Because I think
Erikson wrote an entire essay about it as a reaction to all of that criticism, where he just takes apart that criticism. Like,
I think a huge part of it is perhaps readers with other expectations for what character development is to them, with the writer explaining how they're feeling at all times, or what they're, who their parents were and what their relationship to their parents were, or whatever, having that explained.
Telling, not showing.
Yeah, and I think you don't necessarily get what characters are feeling, but you get characters' behavior and reactions to things.
We should explain what they're feeling anyway. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, and also because like what
stated, I mean, yeah.
What you said, Kath, that you so often in Malazan you feel like you're standing next to them, doing it with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he describes what they go through. He doesn't necessarily describe that much emotional reaction all the time. No. But because you feel like you're there with them, you're emotionally reacting to being in that situation. You know? And then you can relate to the characters that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing writing. We agree.
So let's move on to spoilers now. Okay, so for anyone who hasn't read the book in the chat, and thank you all so much for contributing so much to the chat. We really appreciate it, and you raised some good points. But whoever hasn't read the book, you should click off, go and read the book, and then come back and watch the rest of this. But yeah, spoilers ahead. All right, so where to begin? I mean, this is a book where you are set down in... Okay, there is a prologue, of course, and it's a very, very significant...
There's always a prologue.
Yeah, the prologues are one of my favorite parts, actually, of the books, I have to admit. Dom, that's too quick. But anyway, okay. The prologue introducing Paran as a young boy who... yeah, thanks, Dom, for anyone who doesn't know this. But regardless, I really loved the prologue because of... we got to find out immediately what the political situation is in a very few pages. And it was such a significant prologue because of who was actually in it, such as Paran and Whiskey Jack and Lacine and the Claw. And I thought he did such a great job. And of course, you don't appreciate it when you first read it, but as you go through the book, you realize... And I found that with all the prologues, it's only as you get further into the book that you see how significant what he says in the prologues are. But it was a brilliant introduction to this world.
The level of significance and importance and foreshadowing that he hides in plain sight, because he knows right now you don't know what's going on. So I'm going to spell this out for you.
Yeah.
It's nuts. And I went back. I have read the Gardens prologue about 7 times now. And I've gone back to read it every time I start a new book. Yeah. And I read it a couple of times when I read Gardens. I think I reread the prologue about halfway through Gardens when I read it. And I didn't even realize that was Whiskey Jack at the start. The first time I read the prologue, I didn't even know that was Whiskey Jack. I was like, oh my God, he's hiding.
And Fiddler.
And Fiddler. Yeah.
Fiddler is even in the prologue. Yeah.
I have
Fiddler's
to
in the
read
prologue
it now
briefly.
again. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've read it several times as well. Yeah.
There's so many things also. I mean, I won't go into details because it would be spoilers beyond this book, but there are so many things. Like the prologue is the burning of the mouse quarter.
Yeah.
Right? The mouse quarter comes up multiple times in later books.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a setting for a whole bunch of stuff that pops up later. And you might like the first time I read it, I thought, I've heard that name before. Where do I know that name from? The mouse quarter. I definitely heard that talked about somewhere. It's in the prologue, the very first thing you read when you start the series. And it's the prologues. I always recommend to people, of course, read the prologue at the beginning of the book. When you get about halfway through the book, reread the prologue. And when you get to the end, reread the prologue. And when I got to the rereading, because I already knew the whole 10 books, I went through and read only the prologues of every book, just as sort of a starter.
Yeah.
I read all the prologues and only the prologues, and then I went back and reread Guns of the Moon. The prologues are always really important in Malazan. And in this one, we get Surly, who's just become Lasine, the new empress. We learn that the emperor is dead. We learn that the army has mages, who are an organized force who are slaughtering people for some reason. We meet Whiskey Jack, Paran, Fiddler. The prologue's big.
Yeah. And also the opening scene, like T. Baggins is saying, with rigor and sorry. Well, it wasn't sorry then, but anyway, I remember reading that and I thought Shadow Throne was crazy.
Yes.
And I thought he was really insane. And I thought, who are these people? And why are they talking to Sorry? And why were the hounds released? And I'm still not sure that I understand why they were released to cause this slaughter in this small town. But these are all things that will be referred to later on in the book as well. And it was a brilliant beginning. And Perrin, we saw Perrin again, who we saw as a child. We now see him as a soldier. We find out he's attached now to Lorne. And Lorne goes back to the mouse quarter again, because that is one of the reasons she became the adjunct, I think. But yeah, there's just so much packed into maybe the first 50 pages, let alone the rest of the book. It was a really good beginning. I got hooked immediately, actually, after reading. Yeah.
I think between the prologue, chapter 1, and then the immediate siege of Pale.
I loved Pale. Yeah.
I know consciously that it isn't, but I always think of the Siege of Pale as the beginning of the book.
Same. Same.
Because the whole thing with Cotillion and Shadow Throne and Sorry and Riga, that's all sort of set up. It feels a bit set up-ish.
Yeah.
But where it really starts going balls to the wall, as Carlos would say, is the Siege of Pale, book chapter 2. And did you realize? I didn't realize this until my reread. The best explanation of how magic works in this world is in chapter 2.
No, I did not realize that, and I haven't gone back. I've got to go back now and read it. Since you've said that,
it's actually really short. Tattersail is thinking to herself. It's in italics. It's on page 73 in the edition I have. The Warrens of Magic dwelt in the beyond. Find the gate and nudge it open a crack. What leaks out is yours to shape. With these words, a young woman set out on the path to sorcery. Open yourself to the warren that comes to you, that finds you. Draw forth its power as much as your body and soul are capable of containing. But remember, when the body fails, the gate closes. That is as good an explanation of magic as you're going to get in any Malazan book that I've read.
Yeah, the Warrens are confusing when you first start. It's like,
totally.
How does it work? And we're not really given any explanation, but I actually like that it was left mysterious as well, that there were clearly so many different types of Warrens. And different mages were able to utilize different warrens, that like the High Denor for healing, for example. It's one of the few I can remember, but there's just so many elements to this story, and we've only touched on a couple of things. Let's talk about Tor and the Talani Mass.
Olas Tulan.
My God, when I read that there was hundreds of thousands undead, hundreds of thousands of years, undead, I thought, what? There are what, zombies or creatures undead that have been in existence for such a long time?
And apparently being undead for hundreds of thousands of years gives you an extremely dry sense of humor.
Yes. I love Tool.
Tool is so funny.
Yeah.
He says something like what have you learned about thinking or something, and he's like, it is futile. I love that. I love that line.
Yeah. He always had some of the best lines in this book, but just the concept of somebody existing for such a long time just added another layer to this story, and you realize, okay, that's just one part of it. What about other parts of this story? Who are the Jagus that they referred to in this book? Who are, I don't know.
Who are the Teist Andy?
Yes.
What the hell is up with the Rake?
Yeah. Who is Anamanda Rake?
Why is there a floating fucking city in the sky? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and why is the High Mage? Why is the High Mage of the Malazan army turning demons on his own mages?
Yeah,
I did a whole video just about the Siege of Pale, because so many new readers that I talked to were like, I have no idea what's going on in the Siege of Pale. Who's on whose side? And like, someone betrayed someone, and what the hell's up with this puppet? And there's so many things going on.
Hairlock is the goat.
Hairlock is hilarious. I mean, he's a psychopath, but he's hilarious. Yeah. But yes, I felt the same in Pale. I was like, hang on, who's who? And why are the mages actually attacking the bridge burners? I thought the bridge burners were part of Malazan army. And I couldn't figure out who had which loyalties to which part of this empire, of this army. And I found it actually, it just added something else that I was trying to figure out as I'm trying to figure out how this world works as well. With this moonspawn hanging over this city, it is one of my favorite sieges, actually, that I've read about, because I had never read anything like that before. And especially starting with a betrayal. See, that's not something you usually see in the beginning of a book. You might find it happening later. But having this major betrayal so soon, I'm like, I just walked in. I don't know what's going on. Why are they betraying them? Yeah, there's just so many things.
I always forget where in the series certain things happen, but I think the two of you don't yet know what Moonspawn really is, do you?
No.
I do.
Yeah. Okay.
I do. I don't want to say.
Carlos is only up to Bone Hunters.
Yes. Yeah. I think I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll leave it at that. But
I'll tell you, Carlos, if you thought Moonspawn was cool in book 1.
Yeah.
It gets cooler.
Just wait. Yeah. Just wait.
I think with the Siege, it's also a bit of Erikson playing with fantasy readers choosing sides based on how the narrative is presented to you, and who you follow is the side that you just choose. So like, he gives you a lot of individuals, but he also gives you individuals that are theoretically on opposing sides, and he challenges you so you feel your loyalties are confused. But like the Siege of Pale, I think when I read it, I was like, okay, so Tashrin is betraying all the guys, he's betraying everybody we're okay with. So
seems like
I'm in there with Whiskey Jack and the Bridge Burners, and I'm following Tattersail and Paran, and I like all of these people. And Taishrin, bad.
Yeah. That's what I thought too. Yeah.
But we did I think he slowly starts to, pull back on that a little bit, even with Tattersail and is it Lysine in the dinner scene later where we learn Tattersail was involved in, was it Lorne? And we learned that Tattersail was responsible for like the death of her family, right? And the sort of burning of her village.
Burning the mouse quarter where Lorne is from.
Yeah.
She was one of them, actually. Yeah.
That's one of those things of like, oh, well, I've been following this character that I deemed was good just because they're the character that you're following. And then he sort of punches you in the gut with, well, the character you're following has also done some really bad stuff. And maybe, challenge your own expectations of who the narrative presents you with and who you follow, and just naturally picking a side. That it's always a little more complex than that.
It's one of the things that Erikson is sort of teaching you in this book is he will not give you, like almost never in the entire series, will he give you someone who is good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like just simply good or bad.
Yeah.
There's a couple of characters who remain throughout the entire series pretty much bad, but like even the Bridge Burners, like when I read Gardens of the Moon, I was like, okay, it's really chaotic and confusing, but the Bridge Burners are cool as fuck, and they've been betrayed, and they're the scrappy underdogs, so I'm with them.
Yeah.
And then they get to Darujhistan and they start laying mines in main streets in a full city. And I'm like, are these the good guys though?
Yes.
Like really?
So I'm there reading, going, oh yeah, Bridge Burners are cool as fuck. And then they arrive in Darujhistan and I start to question, okay, hang on, I'm Irish and I'm rooting for the invading
imperialist army. Yeah.
What am I doing here?
And he did that so deliberately because he introduced us to all the characters from Darujhistan. And so I became, and initially I didn't actually want to read about them. I love the Bridge Burners. I wanted to read more about them. But then I got to know the Darujhistan gang and I thought, oh, I really like these people. And it was like, who do I barrack for now? Is it the Bridge Burners or is it these people? And I think he does this so well, and he does it often. He will divide your loyalties until you don't know which side to barrack for. And ultimately, I think it's that maybe both sides are right or maybe both sides are wrong. So he makes you question how you are perceiving these conflicts, how you are perceiving the actions of some of the characters. And that morally grey part is my favorite thing, is trying to figure out who's right, who's wrong. Is anyone right or wrong, or are they both kind of, right some of the time and wrong other times? But it was like, I don't want anyone to die because I love both sides of this conflict.
Yeah, you get into Darujhistan, you're like, Baruch is cool. The Phoenix Inn guys are cool. Krupp is super cool. Like there are so many people in Darujhistan where you're like, oh, this is cool. Circle Breaker and the Eel, what's going on there? And I want to know. And then you're like, but my other heroes are about to explode all of these people I love.
Yeah,
they're going to explode. I mean, the city is sitting on top of a reservoir of gas.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you start bombing Darujhistan, probably the whole city is going up. And I really started thinking, I'm a little conflicted. these guys I liked at the beginning are going to kill everybody I like in Darujistan. I don't really want
decisions, everyone's behavior is predicated on the information and the orders that they have and their understanding of the world and their cultural context. But you have people with a different cultural context and a different upbringing who their decisions are based on their, background. And this is, it just reflects the real world.
This comment is also like, I think Malazan does this better than any series I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Not everyone, but most people in the entire series feel like tiny cogs.
Yeah.
They've got a very limited context. They've got very limited goals that were mostly given to them by someone who really knows what's going on.
Yeah.
Like the strings are being pulled. Power. Yeah, exactly. They've got extremely limited agency and power. And the strings are really being pulled by a very small number of very strong, powerful people. And the gods are actually in the world.
Oh my God!
And they're messing with everyone as well. Yeah.
Painfully like real life.
Yeah. Painfully like real life.
Yeah, I agree with that, Jared.
Except for the gods actually being in the world.
Well, other than that, and also ascendants. I mean, we're introduced to these new
concepts. Are ascendants even?
Yeah, and the gods are actually influencing the events that are occurring upon. I don't know how to pronounce that. I always teeter between opon and upon, but anyway. I
always say opon, but yeah, I don't know.
Well, they were obviously playing with some of the players or some of the characters in the book, and I thought, okay, so this is a world where the gods have a lot of power and are actually interfering in the lives of these people. What's their aim? Do they have
that was about the only thing I liked in the entire book with Crocus was him being manipulated by Opon. Like, he's going to be assassinated. He's like, badass assassin is trying to kill him, and he bends over to pick up a coin and is saved, and like Opon taking really, really active direct role in manipulating things in the world.
Do you think it's a sort of a little playful metaphor almost, or a symbolism of role-playing games of Esselmont and Erikson themselves rolling a dice, flipping a coin, deciding the fates of these characters, that almost it could be an insert or something, I don't know.
Possibly.
Maybe a reference to that in a way. I mean, there's a lot of, like, all role-playing games
is
pretty
very
much
common. Dicing and luck is a very common concept, I think. So, but perhaps it is.
But I mean, I think Carlos has a point, because this entire world exists because Esselmont and Erikson rolled a bunch of dice together, in a way.
And I also like how seamless they make it in certain plot points. Clearly they plant seeds and they plan for it. And then sometimes you get a sense, oh, that thing that happened that was totally random and they gamed that. But you can't always pinpoint where that happens, and I think that keeps it fresh and unpredictable for me.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And of course, don't forget that there are unexpected deaths as well in this series, or in particular.
Haran dies. Sort of.
And so did Tattersale.
Yeah.
Also,
sort of.
Yeah. So, and Tok the Younger, he disappears. He vanishes out of this world as well. So the truth is that having characters disappear or die on you so early on in a series, that made it clear to me no one is safe. So maybe I shouldn't get attached to anyone. And yet on the other hand,
it's interesting though. I mean, because like a lot of people die but don't, like Paran dies, yes, but he doesn't stay dead for like even 5 minutes.
Yeah, I
he
do
comes
like
back.
when he brings people back. He brings people back at a cost.
Yes.
That it's not like it could be a little comic booky, but he doesn't just bring them back because we need them back and we need to sell some books and whatever, like they do in the comics. It's more like, what is the magical cost, the human cost, the sort of spiritual cost of this, and who do they come back as? That it adds another level to it of like, oh, well, we have lost that character that we knew before, and the one that comes back is almost a new character. So like, I get the criticism as well of like, oh, sometimes that character's not going to stay dead, so I guess it nullifies that story. But I don't. Yeah, it's always a little bit unique.
I did a whole video specifically on this subject for that reason, because a lot of people have said, oh, death doesn't mean anything in Malazan, and the stakes are so low because of it and whatever. But in a world where you have hundreds of thousands of year-old undead walking around, and you have the gods themselves walking around, and the place between, or the border between death and life is literally a gate maintained by a guy.
It's physically there,
then like death just isn't, it shouldn't in a world like that be what it is for us.
I think that is the point of death in this series, or Erikson's perspective of it for the series, is that it is nebulous. It is not as concrete as it is in real life. That is part of the world that he has created, or he and Esselmont have created. They have made death not necessarily permanent, and they are playing around with the idea of death perhaps being temporary or resulting in a major change in a character. And I don't think it's fair to say, oh, well, nobody stays dead. That's the whole point, I think, of this series, is that it's not necessarily the end, basically.
Death is a transformation.
Yes.
In these books, it's the transformation into something. It's not the end. For some people, it is the end. They transform into being in Hood's realm, and they don't come back. That's it. A lot of people actually do just die, but a lot of people do just die and become something else.
Yeah.
And it's almost like that is what they were born to do. That they're almost like fulfilling their destiny, almost, in a way.
I don't know if it's that, or whether it is their own actions during their life has led to this transformation in the
earn
future.
It or something.
They've earned it.
Or someone else's actions. I mean, I didn't have any feeling that Paran earned anything.
No, I agree with that.
Opon wanted him to be alive, so he was alive.
And and sometimes it's the flip of a coin.
Yeah, and I can't say anything because it might be spoilers regarding Paran, but yeah, I think that Paran, I actually call him Paran. Why am I saying Paran? But anyway, yeah, on these names, right, we have so many different pronunciations. But I think with Paran that there is a little bit more to it than just Opon deciding, yeah, we're going to bring him back. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, no, I mean, he has a kind of destiny.
Yes,
for sure, longer term in the books. But in that moment, he comes back because Opon decided he should.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Tattersall's dying, or seeming to die, I thought that came out of nowhere.
Also a transformation, though.
Yeah.
Another transformation, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. That's true.
Did you guys get, I mean, because you've only read it once, and I know a lot of people don't necessarily get it that much. Did you get what happened there? When Tattersall died, what do you think happened in that scene?
She was killed by the other mage and her partner, and I think they were
Her soul
combined.
merges.
Yes, they
Her
were
soul
combined.
merges. Yeah. So it's
Yeah,
not
she-
exactly when
Is that
she
correct?
comes back.
I mean, the way I understood it, like, okay, so Nightshield's dead and in a sack,
Mhm.
and Belladon, her lover, is carrying her around in a
Yes.
sack, and he tries to kill her, and Tattersail does some magic which kills him and merges all three of them
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was my
into
understanding as well. Into
Yeah.
one. Into one being. Yeah.
I think
then
he describes the imagery of that kind of thing very, very well,
yeah.
to the point where if you're following along and you stretch your imagination, you sort of allow your imagination to be swept away from it, you can visualize it if you're concentrating, you know? So I think,
Yeah.
like sort of merging souls, and then if he's describing Anomander Rake turning into a dragon and the sort of what it looks like for soul taken to become whatever it is they become. I think if you're, you know, if you allow your mind's eye to kind of run away with it, he's very good at tapping into that.
If you just ignore the conservation of mass and energy.
Yeah. Ignore the laws of physics.
It's like,
Suspense.
how big is this dragon? How big was that dude?
Yeah. Well,
It's
that's
magic.
the thing. Anomander Rake is a dragon as well. So we also have dragons in Gardens of the Moon. And I thought, now this is interesting because it is somebody who's a changeling who can change from a human or supposedly human looking into
Humanish. Yeah.
right, humanish, elvish, really. I mean, that's always my view. He reminds me the way he's described of Drist.
Yeah, he's basically a drow.
Yeah, a drow.
He's basically a drow from D&D. Yeah.
Yeah, and he can become a dragon, a huge dragon as well.
One of my favorite parts of the book.
Yeah, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, I mean, I love dragons. I think most of us do, but I just like the idea of this transformation of a human into a dragon, or so an elf or a drow into a dragon. I also found Anomander fascinating, not so much because we spend so much time with him, but he was the enemy in the first part of the book. In Pale, the bridge burners are, you know, enemies with Anomander. And then we come to Daragistan, and he is their ally. And we see a totally different perspective of him. And I found him and the Tist and I really fascinating. And of course, we don't learn much about them except that they are supposedly immortal as well. But I can see why people love Anomander. I think he's very cool looking as well. Yeah.
And he taps into the simplistic sort of, big badass character with a big sword.
He's the edgiest. He's the edgiest possible edgelord that ever edgelorded.
Yeah, but we love him. But his scenes with the alchemist, I can't remember his name now.
Baruch.
Yes. They're used just sparingly enough that you maintain this aura and this mystique around this character.
Yes.
And he writes that aura so well. Like, there's an importance, there's a weight to his presence, and there's a weight to whenever he speaks. So it just, there's no other way to describe it. It's just fucking cool. You know?
Yeah.
It's just
lasers
cool.
and fireballs.
Yeah.
Totally.
Now, whilst I was really attached to the bridge burners, I fell in love with Whiskey Jack. But I'll be honest, even though Fiddler is my favorite character, and I know that we don't agree on that, Carlos, but that's okay. I don't remember him that well from Gardens of the Moon, to be honest. I remember much more vividly the characters from Daragistan, like the individual characters. I remember Whiskey Jack from there. I remember Parron, and I remember others. And it's been about a year since I've read this book. But Fiddler and Hedge and the others, I have a vague recollection of them.
They
they play a much bigger role in later books. Like in this book, they're not that super active in a way.
For me, I think in like Memories of Ice. That's when I really registered them. But I'm with you, like the Darujhistan. So Darujhistan, thus far, 5 books and 2 chapters in to the series, is still my favorite setting. I love Darujhistan, and I picture it like Morocco. It's like those rooftops.
That's a really good description. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah,
and just by the name, like Stan, if you put Stan on the end of any kind of city name, it's going to sound like it's over there somewhere, Middle East.
It's got an Arabian Nights kind of feel to it.
And you got my favorite character in the whole thing, Moroccan Tom Bombadil, Krupp, who is...
I call him Kruppe.
Kruppe, nice.
He's got an E at the end, that's why. I don't know.
I feel like Krupp would correct like your pronunciation. It's like, no, it's actually Kruppe. I feel like he would do that.
Krupp does not approve of your pronunciation of his name.
I tell you what, he is such a fascinating character. I know that some people don't like him, but he was so mysterious throughout this book. He seemed to have abilities that were not explained, and and even so, he plays a major role in what is happening in Darujhistan. I mean, I thought Baruch was powerful, being the mage or the high alchemist, and yet it seems he differs to Kruppe on occasion.
He is the character that I tend to like in these kinds of stories, that the one that is on the surface not taking things seriously, having a bit of a laugh. He's funny, but he's observant and he's kind. He's kind, observant, and empathetic, and he
perceptive.
Is also the kind of person that other people then don't take seriously and they dismiss.
Yes.
Yeah.
They underestimate.
Underestimate him at their own peril.
Yes.
Yeah. How early did you guys realize that he was the eel?
Not that early. It took me a while. Yeah.
Initially, I just thought he's a bit of a buffoon.
Clown, yeah.
Because we're kind of led to believe that at the beginning.
Oh, yeah, at the beginning, early on. He's just a clown.
It took me a while to figure out that he was the eel. I probably was even surprised. It's been a while, so I can't recall, but I thought it was only as we got further into the book, I thought, maybe, but he's a real silly guy sometimes. I don't know. Could he be
super silly, but like there's a lot in his dialogue and in his conversations with other people where you're like, how does he know that?
Mm-hmm.
Like he's the only character in Darujhistan that knows what's going on everywhere all the time.
Yeah.
You know,
he has to be a god, I swear. He has to be a god or something.
I mean, this is only a very light spoiler, and it doesn't actually spoil anything. Krupp is never explained.
Ah, damn it!
You will never know what Krupp is.
Yeah.
Krupp is Krupp.
Moroccan Tom Bombadil.
Yeah.
Mm.
He is special. Yeah.
Okay, so what did you guys think of the other characters in Darujhistan? Let's talk about Crocus.
Do we have to?
Yeah, he's a character. He plays a major role in Gardens of the Moon.
I've already had people on the fireside say it's just because I'm old, but
no.
he was teenaging so hard in this book.
Yes, right. Yeah.
I was just like, I'm so over it. Like, I don't care about him and Chalice. I don't care about his drama. Every time he was on the page, I was like, can we move on to someone else, please?
For me, he was a good little commentary on your typical fantasy protagonist,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the sense that his circumstances, what's happening to him, is very compelling and entertaining and fantastical. He's a bit stupid and a bit of a stalker, and he's just thinking with his willy all the time.
And
And
also kind of a chosen one. Kind of a chosen
A
one.
little
I mean,
bit.
in the fact that like Opon is directly intervening in his life. you know.
yes,
I have to admit, I was surprised that all the other from the Phoenix Inn were so protective of him. I just thought he's just such a waste of space. I'm sorry, but
I mean, imagine you grew up with someone, and
yes,
like
yes,
one
I
of
get
one of
that.
one of you is politically powerful, one of you is like a badass assassin, one of you is a top fencer and romancer, and then you've got this loser kid, but you grew
Yeah.
up with him,
Yes,
Aladdin
of
was a
course
great
you want to protect him. It is, yeah. Yeah, he
Yeah.
wasn't. I mean, I didn't hate him in this book, but I certainly wasn't all that interested in his story, except to see where it was going to go for the whole storyline regarding Darajistan and whether, they were going to be conquered by Malazan or not. I much preferred Murillo, actually. I
Oh,
thought he was wonderful. He
Yeah.
was charming and he was down to earth in many ways. And yeah, I liked him and I really liked Relic, but Relic was sometimes very standoffish. He was harder to fully grasp as a character. He just seemed, well, he's an assassin, another assassin. And
Which I think is also playing with that trope, like the sneaky, always on top of everything, kind of badass assassin. Relic Nom is that trope. Somebody asked a long time ago, did you guys sort of click into Murillo and Relic Nom and the counselor dude? I forget his name.
Cole?
Cole. Yeah, Cole.
Oh, yeah.
Them being Erikson kind of riffing on the Three Musketeers.
Yeah, I said it in my review.
Okay. Yeah.
It felt because there's even just the swashbuckling nature of them as well.
The dueling, yeah.
And Crocus is kind of D'Artagnan.
D'Artagnan,
the new young stupid guy. No, exactly.
But there's also an element like there's all a bit of Dumas in Darujistan. But there's also the I want to get revenge on the love who stole everything from me.
Isn't that kind of Monte Cristo? I know
Alan's kind of Monte Cristo, yeah.
I think that it was very clever doing that, even though I didn't see it. But now that you've mentioned it, yeah, I can see the Three Musketeers. Though Cole, of course, was quite ineffectual for most of the book. No, he was, but he was also very
off his face drunk for most of the book.
Yeah, he's drunk for the entire time, pretty much. But even so, it was only later that I started to like Cole. But regardless, I did love the dynamic between all the characters, including Krupe's commentary, usually in the inn that they were always found. But I also loved the assassins in Darajistan and the complexity
the
of
fights on the roof.
Yeah, it was
this is where I fell in love with Kalam and Quick Ben.
Yes.
I was like, okay, these guys, everybody else can be a badass assassin, but these guys are the real badasses.
But that's where Darujistan became and remains my favorite setting. I just love the swashbuckliness, the Three Musketeers, the shadowy sort of spy assassin thriller type of thing, jumping on rooftops. This sort of
if I ever ran a Malazan role playing game, it would be set in Darujistan primarily. Like Rajasthan is such a cool setting. I love it.
It is.
But also, and I'm going to show my culture, the fact that all of these people, their base is a pub.
Yeah.
Love it. And it's just people in a pub getting the shenanigans.
Which is also, like, as an avid role player my entire life, I have to say it's like a cliche trope in D&D to say you start in a tavern. Because it's just how so many adventures in D&D have begun throughout the entire history of the game. You're in a tavern and someone approaches you and gives you a job, and it's just like a boring cliche now, but that's
in the pub.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that is one of the. I agree. That is how you start most of D&D, don't you? I haven't played a lot of it. I've only played very little, but a lot of fantasy start off with meetings in taverns, right? So
hopefully people are not still starting their D&D adventures with everyone sitting in a tavern. Like, I think people have gotten over it now, but it's a cliche that I as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, it's a group of adventurers sitting in a tavern waiting to have something happen. You can see the D&D roots. Felt like Ankh-Morpork. I would not say that for me, but yeah.
Well, Ankh-Morpork is like a cosmopolitan city in the Discworld series. There is, I can see some comparison because I felt like Darajistan was very cosmopolitan as well.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
Yeah, no, Darujistan for me felt very, like Carlos said, it has an Arabian kind of feeling. It felt much more sort of exotic than I imagined Ankh-Morpork as being. I imagine Ankh-Morpork more as a sort of typical European-ish fantasy city. But
not quite, no, it's quite different to that. But then Discworld is unique anyway, and yeah. I mean, I can see why Dom said that, but I don't think I would say it's identical. But I can see some similarities between the two anyway. More like the cosmopolitan feel. But anyway, yeah.
Rogue, you, me, and Carlos need to go to the pub after this. Kath, of course, you're invited as well. I can definitely do with a couple of
I have to fly all the way over there, but okay, maybe one day. Okay, so is there any particular characters that you want to touch on, talk about? How about Perrin and his journey throughout this book? He is this young nobleman. Sorry?
There's a moment, and I'm not sure if this is in Gardens or Deadhouse Gates, and I'm going to try to not spoil, but is the scene where there's a giant wagon in a warren in Gardens? Is that in Gardens?
I was thinking of that as well, and I can't remember if that is already in Gardens, if we see it.
I couldn't remember either. That's why I haven't mentioned it. Yeah.
Somebody in the chat, let us know.
Yeah, let us know if you guys know, and we will talk about it or not talk about it if it's about a future book, because it is important. Okay,
we haven't talked much about Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you, P. Baggins. We will talk about Sorry. Yeah.
Creepy as fuck.
I thought she was crazy. I thought she was violent. I thought she was bloody awful. I could not stand the sight of her. And did you find out?
Did you understand when you met Sorry that she was the Fisher girl?
Yes.
I think it took me. I did, but it took me a little bit of time before I figured that out. And it.
Once that clicked, I felt sorry for her.
Yeah.
Because you know that it's not her, it's Cotillion.
I think that took me a little bit longer to figure out that it was Cotillion.
Okay, so at the beginning, in the first chapter, you didn't understand that Cotillion possessed her?
I can't remember now. I may have. It's been a year.
It's totally kind of vague. A lot of people don't really get that connection. Like in the first chapter, this random fisher girl, just because she happens to be there, is possessed by Cotillion, and Riga, the old wise woman, the wax witch, manages to put part of herself into her as well.
Yeah.
Yes, I did
kind of
know
protect
that.
her.
Yeah,
Right.
I realized that. I just can't remember now if I realized it sooner rather than later when I first read the book. Obviously, it became clear later that she was possessed, but I think it took me a little bit time to figure out it was her and the fish girl. Or maybe
early in the book, I totally didn't get it. Like I like Sorry was on the scene, and I was like, who is this freaky, creepy woman? She's going to kill people I care about. Like, it was pretty clear she was dangerous.
And Dom in the chat there says something important as well. When Riga asks the fisher girl a question, that she says sorry, which then that's why that's
Sorry.
the name.
I can't remember. I might have figured it out, or it may have taken me a bit of time. I just knew I couldn't stand her. But the truth is, it wasn't her. You know, it was Cotillion, and his actions. He was ruthless. I really hated him as well. I thought, wow, this is not a pleasant character, and I guess he shouldn't be.
He's the patron god of assassins.
Yeah. And he obviously had an agenda, which it took me a while, because, you know, that's what happens with Gardens of the Moon, is it takes you a while to figure out what the hell is going on. But I didn't figure it out straight away. I did like. Sorry,
I really liked her as a character. I think I sympathized with her, and I don't want to spoil future. I don't want to spoil future books at all, but I like that Erikson always has her past trauma with this situation front and center. Like we're all like, she's always dealing with it. Yeah,
she's maybe not the most misused character in the entire series, but she's one of them.
She's one of them. Yeah.
She's pretty horribly misused.
I mean, I hated the character as she was portrayed at the beginning, but when I understood that, you know, she is being forced to take certain actions which she would never have done on her own, of course you can't help but sympathize with her. She was used. But that's, I think, one of the themes in this book I felt was that the gods played with so many of the characters in the book. I thought that's what they're going to show, that they are just playing for the hell of it. I don't know what their agenda is, but it seemed like nobody was safe, and they didn't care what the consequences were to these individuals. They just used them. So
I remember, like, of course, after you've read the series and you reread, it's totally different. But the first time I read Gardens of the Moon, I got what she was there for, in a way. Like, I didn't understand who Shadowthrone and Cotillion are. I understood they let the hounds loose in chapter 1 to basically cover up what they were doing. Like to create a big chaos. That what exactly they were doing there, and I didn't really understand what they were doing there, but they were kind of covering it up. Cotillion possesses Sorry to keep Paran, because Paran's mission is to figure out what they did in chapter 1. Like, what the hell was that? You know, and she assassinates Paran to keep that from happening, to stop it. Opon then goes, no, we're going to keep him on the board, so that he can find out, and many other things. But that's getting into future books.
Yeah, the one thing about that, it held my interest and my intrigue and my like theory brain, was I figured out with Gardens pretty much, because actually if you go back and read it slowly, he spells it out for you, obviously, who Shadowthrone and Cotillion are. I won't explicitly say, because it's actually a spoiler for that.
I didn't guess.
But why I guess that was because there was a bit of information being revealed in those paragraphs that I went back and I read it again, and I was like, oh, that's very obvious. He's spelling it out for you because
if you look up what a cotillion is,
I know what it is. Yeah.
It becomes more obvious. But
I did know that, and I should have guessed because I do know.
Sure.
I knew the
I didn't
term,
get it.
and
I didn't get it
guess.
at the beginning either. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't guess in this one. And we're
Yeah.
not going to tell you guys, for those who haven't read the rest of the books, though I think most people in the chat are ones who've read the entire series.
Probably,
but Zoe was really one of the most sympathetic characters towards the end because of what she had been put through and forced to do. Yeah, I mean, come on. She was a puppet, really. Oh, we should talk about puppets as well in a minute. Yeah. But she was a tool that was being used against her will. She had no will. But I'm not going to say anything about what happens to her later, but it's, obviously.
The
it's
chat,
very
by the way, the chat has confirmed what we couldn't remember.
Yes.
Paran gets the blood of the hounds on him and enters the sword and sets the hounds free from the wagon in Gardens of the Moon.
Yes.
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 What did you think of the wagon?
I love that scene.
Yeah, but it was horrendous. It was so depressing to think of these creatures being chained for millennia. I just thought the suffering that they're going through, it was a great idea, a great metaphor, I guess, but really, it was very
elevated, it kind of instantly elevated Dragnapur into the most badass sword in fantasy for me. Because I was like, Elric's got Stormbringer, and Stormbringer drinks souls, but Dragnapur actually has hell in it.
Yeah, it's a world in itself. Yeah.
It transports you to hell, which is inside the sword. I was like, what the hell?
Yeah.
That was one of my biggest questions in Gardens, though. I was like, okay, the wagon's cool and badass and horrible and all of that, but why? Like, what's it there for?
Yeah, what's the point?
Yeah. Why does this even exist? Why would someone make this? It's a sword. Someone made it. Why?
And who are the elder gods? I mean, we know about gods. What are elder gods?
Yeah.
And how is it that elder gods can be trapped as well? Yeah, there's a lot of questions with the sword. I still am not clear how Paran was able to release the hounds. I'm still not clear on that. Everyone else has not been able to escape that sword. So part of me is still a bit confused. I'd have to go back and reread it, obviously.
I don't think I could 100% accurately explain it. But because Paran is the only one in the sword who is not bound to the wagon, like he is a free agent inside the sword, and he's the only one.
How did he get in not bound to the sword?
Because he's got the blood of the hounds on him.
Because he had some sort of
because there was some sort of magical connection there. So I'm sure someone in the chat could explain it better than I can. But yeah, he's a free agent inside the sword, and he pulls, like, in the middle of the wagon is darkness. There's this pool of darkness in the middle of the wagon, which nobody on the wagon, bound to the wagon, can get to, but he can. And then he pulls the hounds into that, which brings them out.
If I reread
it's a very important thing, which plays a role. But I don't 100%.
I will understand a lot more how it works. Yeah.
And there's a scene with an important character later who sort of explains the purpose or the origin. Is that in Gardens or is that later?
I think that's later.
Okay, then I won't mention that because that was
You're talking about Draconis, right? Draconis, we know that Draconis is in the sword, in Gardens, but I think that discussion, that conversation with Draconis is later.
Right. Okay.
Not in Gardens. I think.
That's the difficulty with having read more books in the series. Sometimes it can be confusing to keep track of when we read something or where it occurred. But
I'm always really impressed by some of the people we have on the Fireside Discord when we're discussing things like Surav. Surav knows exactly what happened in every book.
Yeah.
On
like and which book exactly, and like the chapter and that kind of shit. And I'm like, dude, are you looking things up on the wiki really quickly, or what's wrong with you? Like,
so let's talk about Lorne. Let's talk about Lorne. What did you think of Lorne? Did you like her? Did you hate her? What did you think of her character, of her storyline in this?
I like Lorne. I think she's interesting. I think she represents a very complex person who will go into an imperial army and for what reasons. And she sort of represents that there's no straight answer to, is an empire bad? Or for what reason do empires exist? And I think for that reason, I enjoy her character. We don't get a huge amount of like her perspective, right?
No, we do. We learned quite a bit about her in the. Well, I felt that we learned that she clearly went into the army seeking revenge against those who actually killed her family.
Burned her.
Yeah. I felt she had an agenda, a very clear agenda to revenge herself on Tattersall and others.
Yeah. Oh, I meant more so like
she was conflicted as well.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. What was that?
Go ahead, Carlos.
I just meant more so page time, like page time directly follows.
There's a lot of page time in this. Yeah. I found her relationship with Tool very interesting as well. I thought this is a strange dynamic, and clearly I don't know how he viewed her, but I personally really didn't like her as a person, but not the way she was drawn, just as a person. She felt a little bit fanatical to me, and I am definitely not a person who likes fanatics.
I mean, I think it's very cool and interesting and maybe almost required in a largely military fantasy that you have someone powerful who was just following orders.
Yes.
You know, like she is someone who is inside constantly questioning whether she should be doing what she's doing.
Yes.
But she does it anyway because she's following orders, because the Empress told her to. And I liked that dynamic a lot. Well, it is something to struggle with, but that's what I liked about it. That
and also
it's difficult. You know, it's difficult to like Lorne. You can sympathize with her a lot.
Yes.
Especially, like, I also think this is a great testament to Erikson's writing ability, that one of the most legendary and memorable scenes in the entire book is a dinner.
That's what I was just going to bring up. The
dinner with Lorne and Tattersall, and that reveal is just like chills, you know. It's epic, and it's just some people talking.
It's Erikson's ode to the banquet in Dune, when you're trying to figure out where everybody's agendas lie, where their loyalties lie, and there's the sort of head hopping, perspective shifting going on, where tensions are running super, super high. And it's sort of placed in Gardens of the Moon, where it's also placed in Dune. Where you're getting into it and you're still not quite sure where your loyalties lie. And then, okay, let's just have a banquet or a dinner with a ton of characters. that are
and a massive oh shit moment.
Yeah.
And I think
that whole scene is just sort of rolling along, and you're like, yeah, okay. Like I also had the thought, yeah, this is kind of like that banquet in Dune and head hopping or whatever. And then it's like, oh, wait a sec.
And I think you come out of that dinner scene almost more on Lauren's side.
Totally.
Of course.
Yeah.
Because her family was killed, and because these people, because we can't forget that in the prologue, the witches were not that powerful. We were told this.
It was just slaughter.
Of course, it was slaughter. And that's why, of course, our sympathies are with Lorne, but her just blind allegiance to the Empress, her refusing to disobey orders, even though she was looking to release a tyrant, a jagged tyrant who we are told can destroy worlds. I'm like,
a potential apocalypse.
Yeah. I mean, I still do not understand why that was going to happen, except that I did read something today because I was trying to refresh my memory on it. Apparently that was to occupy Anamanda Rake while the bridge burners did what they did in Darujhistan. But the danger of allowing a tyrant, even the name tells you what it is.
It's kind of short-sighted.
Madness. Yeah, I'm
sorry. Short-sighted.
Cycle a scene.
but it's like, well, the other side has a nuke.
Exactly.
And we don't. So let's go dig up a nuke.
You're giving somebody with a vendetta access to nuclear codes. Pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, don't get me wrong. I didn't think it was unrealistic that something like that could happen. I just thought how short-sighted it was that they would release a monster.
What do you do after the Battle of Darujhistan if Rake loses?
Yeah, and you can't control this tyrant. What do you do then? See, that's what really bugs me with decisions like this, and that is why I really dislike Lysine. Yeah, I disliked her from the prologue. I absolutely hated that she tried to blow up the bridge burners. I'm sorry, but never acceptable. And then she releases a tyrant as well. She is not a sympathetic. Well, she's not to me anyway. Sympathetic.
She would. I found. I mean, again, it's like Erikson won't let you off the hook. Like at the dinner, you go from Lorne is a pretty horrible person to, oh my God, I totally understand Lorne.
Yeah.
And then you, in the same moment, you go from Tattersall's a super sympathetic person, and oh my God, she just burned a whole bunch of people because she was told to. So she was also just following orders. And she feels guilty about it, and she realizes it was not a good thing to do. But still, it's like these are two people who are just following orders and have done horrible things, you know?
So they're as bad as each other, pretty much.
Kind of. I mean, in a way. But I liked T. Baggins's comment. Lorne died at the dinner. She did basically commit suicide at the dinner.
Yeah.
And all of herself that was important, she cut it off, killed it.
Yeah.
And the adjunct continued.
It's a great,
but Lorne didn't.
Accurate. Yeah. I found it quite sad, actually, because she does have this, great reason to resent the Empire, to resent the Majors, but she, for some reason, decided that loyalty to the Empress was more important than doing the right thing. And I know that happens a lot with soldiers, that they feel they have to follow orders. We don't have to like it when they do in a situation where they shouldn't be doing something like that. But she was.
And then she digs up a nuke.
Yeah.
Digs up a nuke. Yeah. Which also, by the way, very badass scene when Dragon comes down. That unbelievable imagery.
Yeah.
He's very good at the imagery. This is a book that, even if you're not great at visualizing a story, he describes it so well you can't help but see it. Or sorry, well, I can't help but see it anyway. Yeah, I don't like Taishan. He tried to blow up the bridge burners. I don't like him. But anyway.
It's just following orders.
Yeah, I'm sick and tired of that. Yeah, I'm sick and tired of atrocities being performed in the name of I'm just following orders. Yeah.
I mean, it's not it's sort of hinted in Gardens of the Moon. Like Taishan is high enough up that he's not just following orders.
That's what I always thought. There is a conversation between
he
him
has
and
an agenda.
Jack. When they were talking, like there was real animosity between them, and that he was doing whatever he wanted, even though Dujek didn't want him to do certain things. But honestly, I don't blame Whiskey Jack and the Bridge Burners feeling like they were betrayed.
Oh, because they were. They totally were.
Yeah.
It's
no.
kind of,
I mean, it's spun as an accident. It is actually spun that. Oh no,
but they
wasn't
were betrayed.
Yes.
I mean, it's kind of clear. I don't think it's spoiling anything specifically that's only in later books. It's kind of clear that because it already starts in the prologue. Lasine is the new empress.
Yes.
She has somehow gotten rid of the emperor.
Yep.
And she is cleaning house.
Yes.
Right. So anybody who is old guard, who is loyal to the old emperor and not explicitly loyal to her, is getting slaughtered.
Yeah.
And it starts with
what I felt. I thought that was the case from the prologue. It was clear that she feels threatened by the bridge burners.
Yeah.
So it's no surprise, but yeah.
And in that context, you could also think, well, if Taishan doesn't do what she wants, he's dead. He has to prove his loyalty to her. Because he's just going to get assassinated if he doesn't do.
He's also a soldier. He's also a soldier who has to follow.
And not only a soldier, but like self-preservation. Like he knows he's going to be assassinated if he does not do exactly what she wants him to.
Yeah. No,
so he's helping her clear out the other deadwood, so to speak. You know, the other mages, the bridge burners, etc.
It's so short-sighted to kill all the bridge burners and the. I mean, I know it's a preemptive strike, but even so, it does seem very short-sighted.
The bridge burners doesn't seem short-sighted to me because they're just soldiers. Like they're kind of legendary soldiers, but they're just soldiers. But the mages are heavy weaponry.
Yes.
You know, for the army and killing mages left and right just seems like a really bad strategic move to me. But
that's what I thought too.
Yeah.
And I don't want to spoil anything from later books, but have any of you changed your opinion of Taishan going forward?
Yeah.
In the sense of
you like him or don't like him, or you understand him or don't
because of other books, you mean, or because of this?
Because
okay.
Haven't like obviously I'm only
I still don't like him.
Yeah, I still don't like him either, but I
still don't like him. I understand him a little bit more. Have you actually read Knight of Knives? Because I know you're reading Bone Hunters.
I haven't read Knight of Knives. No.
I think
should I read? Should I?
It will help with Bone Hunters to give you some perspective of certain aspects of the story. I felt it very helpful, and it isn't a very long book. But
opinions differ. A lot of people say just read the 10 books and don't read any Asselmont until you go for a reread, which is what I did.
I just read the one. I'm intending not to read any others. But that was enough. And it wasn't a very long book, but I really did find it incredibly useful to give me perspective
of
certain major events that take place in Bone Hunters, and
it depends. It depends on how you feel. Depends on how you feel about spoilers, because it's not exactly explicit spoilers, but there are things in Night of Knives that make some things in later books clearer than they normally would be.
Okay.
Oh,
which
really?
which can feel a little spoilery. You know who some people are before you otherwise might.
Okay.
Or and know who they were, their background, that kind
I'm
of thing.
going to ask you about that later, because
we can talk about that in detail later. But there, I just finished Return of the Crimson Guard, which is sort of the second, like you read Night of Knives would be first, and other books as well. And there are things there, like Dom said, in Esselmont's books, there are things there where, like, I haven't achieved a point where I like Taishan. Right. I still find him pretty unlikable, but I feel like I understand his perspective and why he did what he did when he did a lot more than I did in Guns of the Moon, certainly. He's a pretty serious badass, which you don't necessarily completely realize in Guns of the Moon.
Well, it's too early. We didn't really get to see enough. But now,
he seems like another mage who is like the senior mage, but it doesn't seem like he's quite the badass that he actually is.
I liked him a little bit more in Memories of Ice.
I was gonna say that I don't know if I liked him, but I think I got to a point where I was like, oh, maybe I don't hate him.
Yeah, same.
It started the process of forgiving him for the bridge burners.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll ever forgive him for the bridge burners, because I'm too attached to them. But anyway. So we've been going almost 2 hours. I thought maybe we should finish up, because I'm sure you lovely people have other things to do. But I thought maybe we will finish up by talking about what we thought of the end, what we like, dislike about the book, and then, go from there. So, Carlos, would you like to start?
Well, I, for one, like any sort of fantasy book that has a fete or a banquet or a fancy dress party as the
I love fancy dress. Yeah.
as the denouement, is that the word in French? Denouement, I guess.
I wouldn't describe the fate as a denouement, considering like how much really epic shit happens during it.
But I think, apart from all of the epic shit that happens, I think what sums up Gardens for me thematically is actually when Crocus throws the coin into the ocean on the last page, which is one of the endings of books I've read in recent memory in the last couple of years that has stuck with me. And I'm not sure exactly why, because it feels somewhat insignificant or small, and also with a character that I don't necessarily love. I don't know. I just really like the fact that that book felt like so many little guys getting stepped on by big, powerful guys, that this one silly teenager decides, no, you know what? I'm going to take a little bit of control back. And I'm going to throw this coin into the ocean. And I just really liked that as sort of the last bit of the book. And it kind of bookended it for me. And yeah, I
that's
overall,
a really good point about the coin.
Yeah. But overall, the chaos of the book and the sort of compelling nature of, you know, the switching scenes and POV hopping like crazy, and starting to get into the rhythm and noticing, oh, that character that's mentioned in this scene, we're witnessing the same scene that we just read 10 pages ago from a different perspective. Oh, this is all very cool. That then ending with one character saying, no, I want to have a little bit of control over what's happening is kind of cool. And then from there, with Deadhouse Gates especially, like, it does sort of calm a little bit in terms of perspective, in terms of the craziness and the chaos, to a point.
No, it doesn't. It'll change.
Obviously, I haven't read the second half of the series, but Memories of Ice is chaos as well. But I do like that as a bookend for the first book, him throwing the coin into the ocean and kind of being like, okay, we're taking back a little bit of control here. Let's sort of hope for the little guy, you know? So,
it's one of the really big themes of the series, but especially this particular book.
Yeah.
Fate. Like individual choice and how much it matters and how much people can be manipulated, and free will and all of that. Like, you've got the coin, but you've also got the sword. Like Paran has the sword, you know, and the gods are constantly fucking with people.
Yeah.
And people turning around, like at the end, Crocus turns around and says, actually, gods, fuck you in particular, you know, like no more playing with me. I'm my own man.
Yeah. I actually thought that's what the series was going to be, about the gods messing with the people and the people deciding, no, we're not going to.
Part of what the series is about.
Part of it. It's part, but it's not the only part. But I also do love that final bit where they're like, no, we're not going to, you don't get to decide or play with me anymore. I'm going to do whatever I want. But I also loved the whole scene in that party, because everything happened so frenetically. It was like one thing after another, and it's like, oh my God, I've just dealt with this and now there's something else happening. And trying to piece it all together was difficult to begin with. And then, of course, you got the overall picture of what the bridge burners were trying to do, what the Phoenix Inn people were trying to do, and it all just came together so well. And then we have an Azath, and I'm left utterly confused yet again.
What the hell is an Azath?
We didn't mention the Azath,
Yeah. I was like, what the hell is this? What does it mean? What does it do? I don't get it, and I still don't get it, but I love that. It was almost like an Easter egg, like, okay, yeah, I'm going to explain some things, but here's something you don't know. And you need to read more to find out what the hell an Azath is. Does this mean the tyrant will never get out? Does it mean that he's blocked? What happened to Relic? So many questions left for me every time I finish one of these books. But
although the best thing, hands down, about the Fate was Animander Rake, a guy who can turn into a dragon, turning up wearing a dragon mask.
Yes, badass. Yes.
That was cool. And the
like,
fight.
I can't hide what I am. I mean, I'm just going to come up as me, basically.
Also, Krupp falling asleep with food on his face, was that was there as well?
And him wearing a cherub mask. Like a cute innocent. I loved that. Yeah, the Fate is awesome. And then the Finist from the Tyrant being a harmless acorn, and then the acorn grows into an Azath house, and you're like, you're going to introduce this at the end of the book? Really?
Yeah.
A what?
And but I loved it. I thought,
of course.
I've not seen this done in other books. Well, I have seen cliffhangers or things like that, but this was like, what the hell is this now? I'm just starting to figure out this world, and you throw me a curveball. But
and it's not like it's just some sort of weird, unimportant detail. The Azath houses appear throughout the entire series and are super important to everything that happens.
Yes.
And it's like here is one. Bye. We're done.
Yeah. Now, is this the book where the bridge burners? I don't know how to say this in case it's a spoiler. Yeah, it's a hard one. Where
I
there
think I know what
is-
you're talking about.
I feel
And
like
it's
you
not.
might be about to say something from Memories of Ice.
Yeah.
I
I
think
thought it happened in this book that
I think
I
you're
don't know
gonna
how to say it without it being a spoiler.
I,
So better
I think
don't.
you're about to say a spoiler. I agree with Carlos.
Yeah.
I think I know what you're about to say, and it's not this book.
It's got something to do with Lucine and Dujek.
Oh, that's not what I was thinking you were going to say.
No.
I was thinking.
No.
Yeah, I was thinking something else.
If I remember correctly, Lucine only really appears.
No,
in
not
the
her
prologue of this book.
appearing, but something that Dujek and the bridge burners.
Oh, right. Okay. I think I know what you mean, and I think that's later.
I thought that was in Gardens of the Moon, but I could be
Well,
wrong.
basically, Gardens of the Moon ends with the bridge burners at the Fate.
Yes.
That's
okay.
it.
Okay. Thank you,
I-
Pebble. I won't
I
say
think
anything else.
Pebble's
I'm going
right.
to
Yeah,
stop here.
It's Memories
I
of
can't
Ice.
remember
Yeah.
which book it
Yeah, yeah.
was.
I
thought it was
know.
in
I'm pretty sure I know what you mean, and it's not this book.
Yeah. Okay.
Because at the end of Gardens of the Moon, we've there's been the whole drama with the Jagged Tyrant, and the Azath House pops up, and the bridge burners, or at least some of them, are at the Fate.
Yes. Yeah.
And the stuff you're talking about comes in Memories of Ice.
Okay, I forgot. I couldn't remember. Certain things I can remember from each individual book, but some things, and this happens to me with a lot of series, they blur, they blend, so I can never remember from which book.
I have no idea. The whole thing to me is just one story, and I don't know where in which book anything is.
Yeah.
Like I can usually kind of start. I have to think about it, but I can narrow it down because I'm like, well, in this book, the whole thing takes place in this place, and these people are not in it. So all of the stuff regarding them and other places can't be in this book.
Yeah.
You know, but it's kind of a blur to me.
Well, I just wanted to end by saying that for me, when I finished Gardens of the Moon, I knew I was going to read the next one because I was so curious about so many things that we don't learn in the first book. And I don't expect to learn everything in a first book, but I loved the writing so much. I loved his descriptive prose. I loved some of the characters. And I was so intrigued to find out, you know, where is this story going to go? What is the main story? Because I didn't quite figure that out. I still haven't figured that out after 8 books. And I think, I think this is something unique and different to anything else I've read. And I want to know more. But I won't say that this book sold me completely on the series. That happened to me in Deadhouse Gates. At the end of that, I was sold. But this one, I thought there's a chance, but I got to see what the next book is like.
Yeah, so I think that Deadhouse Gates sold me emotionally. Yeah.
Yes, it is. Pebble.
When I read these the first time, I already described the situation, and I basically just read all 10 of them back to back. I mean, this was a few years before I had a channel, and at the time, I also didn't really have anyone to talk to about it. Discussions like this, or on the Discord or whatever. So I was just like, I was in Malazan. Like, I finished this book and I picked up the second one 5 minutes later. A couple of them I finished it and I was like, I'm kind of exhausted. I don't think I can go straight into the next one today. Maybe tomorrow or the day after, but I need a little space.
Yeah.
But I was totally into it after this book, and just went straight in. You know.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a perfect book. There's certain things which, I mean, honestly, I didn't have a lot of criticisms of the book when I read it, but I recognize it may not be for everyone because there are so many questions left unanswered. But just this rich world is so worth it, let alone some of these wonderful characters that we meet. But anyway, I've spoken already. So, Carlos, what about you?
I think to like sum up Gardens of the Moon, I switched off my critical brain while reading it. It entertained me, it thrilled me, it gave me buckets of imagination, and it whisked me away. And I forgot that I was reading a book. I was just in it. So honestly, yeah, like I could find criticisms, but I don't care. That's sort of
Yeah, I think I felt the same way. That, of course, I'm sure that there were criticisms I could make of the book, but overall, my experience was so uplifting in a way because I was so, as you said, transported into this world. I felt like I was in it as everything was happening, and pulled this way and pulled that way. And I love it when I get so emotionally invested in what's going on. So yeah, I agree with you. It is definitely a book that may not be perfect, but it's still really good.
Yeah,
I think
it's funny with Malazan. Like I would probably, I don't have a firm ranking, but I would probably put Gardens of the Moon in my bottom 3 of the 10. But the bottom 3 of Malazan are better than almost every other fantasy anything I've ever read. So, like, yeah, is it bad? No, it's not bad. It's just other books in the series are better. I think the main thing. Yeah, exactly. Like, if you're going to bother ranking things, something has to be at the bottom. I think if I was going to criticize anything, it would be maybe the pacing is sometimes kind of wonky in Gardens of the Moon, and improves, I think, in later books.
Yeah, good pacing.
Yeah,
I felt it was fairly even throughout. I didn't feel an issue with the pacing in this one.
To me, it felt frenetic.
Sorry?
Yeah.
Frenetic. Yeah.
Frenetic,
yeah, which I mean also can be a very conscious, intentional pacing choice, but it feels like in later books there's a bit more. First of all, there's a bit more of an up and down. Like there's a build up to an epic thing, and then there's a bit of a like, okay, I can breathe for a little while, and then a bit more of a build up and so on. And also that there's a constant building tension, because the structure, whatever the structure or the pacing of any Malazan book is, the structure is always, it's building up towards a convergence. Everything comes together for an epic finale in every book, and also over the entire series. And yeah, it may be a bit less of a feeling or a clear kind of feeling of that in this book, but also like it's a first book in a massive, super detailed chunk of world building. There's so much that has to be introduced for the very first time in this book. And it's amazing how much, like, considering it's the thinnest Malazan book, it's amazing how much is actually introduced in there. I mean, Warrens and Soul Taken and Jaggets and Talana Mas, and just like so much.
Descendants, gods.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just like an unending list of stuff that is introduced for the first time. And if you're cramming all of that into 650 pages, it's going to feel a bit full or frenetic, like you said. It's a busy book in a lot of ways, but I don't think we need to. Probably nobody who's watching is someone we need to convince to read it.
No.
So,
but hopefully other people watch it after. Well, actually, no, because this is all spoilers. What am I saying?
It's all spoilers.
That's right.
Anybody who's watching this is either ruining it for themselves or has read it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Nevertheless,
So,
it's definitely a book worth reading, and
absolutely.
I agree with you. I don't think it'll be in my top 5, but I'm not sure where I'd rank it yet. Yeah, I want to finish all of them, and then I might consider it. But ranking is so hard for me.
I rank on sort of gut feeling, and if you ask me tomorrow, it'd probably be different.
Yeah, same. I'm never
I also refuse to say, like, because at least in this series, none of them stand out so much above the others that I would say there's a number 1 for me. But my number 3, my top 3 would be Memories of Ice, Bone Hunters, and Midnight Tides, I think. And I always put Crippled God out of it because I'm like, Crippled God is the epic finale. Of course it's at the top, but you know, it doesn't really count in a way.
Dead House Guides, Bone Hunters, so far for me, and probably House of Chains, but I haven't read all of them. So, yeah.
So far for me, Memories of Ice, Midnight Tides.
Everyone loves. Yeah, see, I'm a Seven Cities girl. What can I say? I definitely prefer those storylines. But regardless, we will be having a Memories of Ice discussion. I really hope it will be probably not till the end of May because I've got other things on. But thank you to everyone in the chat in particular, but also to you guys. You guys have been fantastic. I've absolutely loved this discussion. And thank you so much, Carlos, for stepping in on such short notice, though you wouldn't have guessed. You've done a wonderful job at discussing this with us, as well as Matt, as always. But thank you, everyone. I'm sorry.
No, Jared, I'm saying the Crippled God doesn't count because it's just automatically kind of number 1, obviously.
Getting called out.
It's not even worth thinking about the Crippled God because it's already there. So yes, the Crippled God, and then my top 3.
I gotta say, because so many people love the end of this series, love the Crippled God, I'm kind of a bit nervous about it, and nervous. I'm hoping that I will love it just as much because
it's kind of weird.
It's the best. It's the best.
It's kind of weird, honestly, because really, Dust of Dreams and Crippled God are one book, right? And should probably be considered as one book. And Dust of Dreams is definitely in my bottom 3, and Crippled God is definitely at the top. It's really weird.
Okay.
But you will form your own opinions.
Yeah. But anyway, again, thank you guys so very much for coming and having this discussion with me. I really appreciate you. And thank you to everyone in the chat. And we will see you next time. Bye, everyone.
See ya.
Thanks, everybody.